The conference room felt like a cage. I sat at the polished mahogany table, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the faces around me. 13 board members, one CEO, and Preston, the CFO, who sat directly across from me with that smug expression I'd come to despise. "Let's talk about the quarterly projections," Preston began, his voice dripping with condescension. He flipped through the report I'd prepared, barely glancing at the numbers. Then he looked up, his eyes settling on me with something close to amusement. "Honestly, Delaney," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you've been crunching numbers for what? 5 years now. And you still don't get it. You'll never understand what real wealth is. Maybe it's because you're still playing with your basic spreadsheets and amateur projections." The room went silent. Heat flooded my face, but I kept my expression blank. My nails dug into my palms under the table. Preston leaned back in his chair, grinning like he'd just won something. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I decided Preston would regret every word. "My name is Delaney, and I'm 31 years old. I've worked at Harrington Financial for 5 years, climbing from junior analyst to senior financial strategist. I'd built my reputation on precision, on catching details others missed. But in Preston's world, I was invisible. Just another worker bee whose name he barely remembered. After the meeting, I walked back to my office in silence. My co-workers avoided eye contact. They'd heard everything. The humiliation burned like acid in my chest, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down at my desk and opened my computer. Preston had made a critical mistake. He thought I was powerless. He thought humiliating me in front of the board would keep me in my place. What he didn't know was that I had access to something he desperately needed. The Silverton deal. A $40 million acquisition that would make or break Preston's career. And I was the only person in the company authorized to approve the final compliance documents. I smiled to myself. The game had just begun. That evening, I stayed late at the office. The building was quiet, most people having left hours ago. I pulled up the Silverton files and reviewed every detail. Preston had been working on this deal for 8 months, courting investors, negotiating terms, making promises to the board about the massive returns they'd see. But the deal couldn't close without regulatory approval. And that approval required my signature on 3 separate compliance forms. Preston knew this, of course, but he'd taken it for granted. He'd assumed I'd just sign whatever he put in front of me, like I always had. Not anymore. I found what I was looking for buried in Section 7 of the contract, a discrepancy in the asset valuation. It wasn't huge, but it was significant enough that if the regulators caught it, they'd delay the deal by months. Maybe kill it entirely. I sat back in my chair, thinking. I could fix this easily. I could correct the error, sign the forms, and let Preston take all the credit like he always did. Or I could wait. I could let him come to me, desperate and sweating, realizing too late that he needed me. I chose to wait. 3 days passed. I went about my work as usual, attending meetings, reviewing reports, saying nothing about the Silverton deal. Preston hadn't reached out. He probably assumed everything was on track, that his assistant had already gotten my signatures. On the 4th day, my phone rang. Preston's extension. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Delaney speaking. "Delaney, it's Preston." His voice was tight. "I need you to come to my office. Now." I glanced at my watch. "I'm in the middle of something. Can it wait until this afternoon?" "No." He sounded irritated. "This is urgent." I smiled. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. I took my time walking to his office. When I arrived, Preston was pacing behind his desk, his usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. His assistant sat in the corner, looking uncomfortable. "Close the door," Preston said. I did, then took a seat across from him. He sat down, trying to compose himself. "The Silverton deal closes in 6 days," he said. "I need your signature on the compliance forms. Today." I nodded slowly. "I haven't reviewed them yet." His jaw tightened. "What do you mean you haven't reviewed them? They've been on your desk for a week." "Have they?" I kept my voice neutral. "I must have missed them. I've been busy with other projects." Preston's face flushed red. "Delaney, this is not the time for games. I need those signatures by end of business today." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. 4 or 5 years, I'd watched this man take credit for my work. I'd watched him dismiss my ideas, talk over me in meetings, treat me like I was nothing. And now he needed me. I'll review the documents this afternoon, I said calmly. But Preston, I need to be thorough. These compliance forms are serious. If there's any error, it could delay the entire deal. There are no errors, he snapped. I've had 3 lawyers review everything. Then one more review won't hurt. I stood up. I'll let you know what I find. I turned to leave, but Preston's voice stopped me. Delaney. His tone had changed, softened slightly. I need this deal to go through. The board is counting on it. I looked back at him. I understand. I'll do my job, Preston. Just like I always have. I left before he could respond. As I walked back to my office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. That afternoon, I sent Preston an email. Subject line, Silverton Compliance Review. I detailed the discrepancy I'd found in the asset valuation. I explained that signing off on the forms, as they were, could expose the company to regulatory penalties. I recommended delaying the deal until the issue was resolved. Preston called me 30 seconds after I hit send. You can't be serious, he said, his voice barely controlled. This is a minor technicality. Minor technicalities are how companies get fined millions of dollars, I replied. Or worse, how executives lose their licenses. I'm just doing my job, Preston. Protecting the company. Delaney listened to me. He was trying to sound reasonable now. This deal has been in the works for months. We've made commitments to investors. If we delay now, we lose credibility. We lose money. Then we should have caught this error earlier. I paused. I can fix it. But I need access to the original negotiation files. The ones that show how the valuation was calculated. Silence. Those files were Preston's territory. He guarded them jealously. Why do you need those? He asked. To understand where the discrepancy came from. So I can correct it properly. Another pause. Fine. I'll send them over. Thank you, Preston. The negotiation files arrived in my inbox an hour later. As I reviewed them, I realized the error wasn't accidental. Preston had deliberately inflated certain asset values to make the deal look more attractive to the board. It wasn't illegal exactly, but it was aggressive accounting. The kind that regulators hated. I could fix it. But doing so would make Preston look bad. It would show that he'd been reckless, that his projections were based on questionable numbers. Or I could fix it quietly, make him look good, and go back to being invisible. I thought about his words in the boardroom. You'll never understand what real wealth is. I thought about 5 years of being overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. I picked up my phone and called Preston. I've reviewed the files, I said. I can fix the discrepancy, but it's going to require revised projections. The deal is still solid, but the returns will be about 15% lower than what you told the board. 15%. Preston sounded panicked. That's not acceptable. That's reality, I said calmly. Unless you want to commit fraud. Preston was silent for a long moment. I could almost hear him thinking, calculating, trying to find a way out. Finally, he spoke. Can you come to my office? We need to discuss this in person. When I arrived, Preston looked different. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I'd never seen before. Fear. He gestured for me to sit, then closed the door. Delaney, he began, his voice low, I need your help. Those words, from the man who'd humiliated me days ago. I savored them. I'm listening, I said. If I go to the board with revised projections, they'll question everything. They'll lose confidence in me. He ran a hand through his hair. Is there any way to present this that makes it look like we discovered new information, not that we made a mistake? I pretended to think. Maybe. If we frame it as due diligence catching a third-party valuation error, that could work. It makes us look thorough, not incompetent. Preston's eyes lit up. Yes, exactly. Can you draft that presentation? Of course. I paused. But Preston, I'll need your support going forward. He frowned. What do you mean? I mean I need to be included in these deals from the beginning, not just brought in at the end to sign forms. Preston studied me for a long moment. I could see him weighing his options. realizing he didn't have many. Finally, he nodded. Fine. You'll have a seat at the table. In writing, I added. I want an email confirming my expanded role. His jaw tightened, but he agreed. I'll send it today. I stood up. Then I'll have the revised presentation ready by tomorrow morning. As I walked back to my office, I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was just the beginning. Preston had given me leverage, and I intended to use it. Over the next 2 days, I worked on the presentation. I crafted it carefully, making Preston look like a hero who'd caught a potential problem through rigorous oversight. The board would see him as thorough, not reckless, and I would be the one who'd made it possible. The presentation went perfectly. The board accepted the revised projections, praised Preston for his diligence, and approved moving forward with the deal. Afterward, Preston barely looked at me. No thank you, no acknowledgement. Just a curt nod as he left the boardroom. I didn't care. I had what I needed. The email confirming my new role. Proof that Preston needed me. 3 weeks later, Preston came to me with another problem. The Silverton deal had closed, but now there was a new project. A potential merger with a tech company called Quantum Systems, even bigger than Silverton. $60 million, and Preston was in over his head. The due diligence is a nightmare, he admitted, sitting across from my desk. Their financials are a mess. I need someone who can make sense of it. And you thought of me, I said, not bothering to hide my amusement. He shifted uncomfortably. You're good with complex data. Better than anyone else here. I let him squirm for a moment. I'll need full access to everything. Their books, their contracts, their internal communications. You'll have it. And I present my findings directly to the board. No filtering through you. Preston hesitated, but finally nodded. Agreed. I spent the next month buried in Quantum Systems financials, and what I found was damning. The company looked profitable on paper, but dig deeper and it was clear they were cooking their books. Inflated revenues, hidden liabilities, questionable accounting practices. The merger would be a disaster. I scheduled a meeting with Preston to present my findings. When I showed him the evidence, his face went pale. If we go through with this merger, the company will be liable for all of Quantum's hidden debts, I explained. We're talking tens of millions in potential losses. Preston slumped in his chair. The board is expecting this deal. I've been telling them for weeks how transformative it will be. Then you need to tell them the truth, I said. That due diligence revealed problems that make the merger too risky. They'll blame me, he muttered. Or you can present it as your decision to walk away. That you refuse to put the company at risk, despite the pressure, to close the deal. That's leadership, Preston. He looked at me, realization dawning. You want to present this to the board. I want to present the facts. How you frame them is up to you. Over the next few days, Preston and I worked together on the presentation. For the first time, he actually listened to my input, asked for my opinion. He was learning that I wasn't just someone who signed forms. I was someone who could save his career. The board meeting was tense. Preston presented the findings, carefully framing the decision to walk away from the quantum merger as a strategic move to protect the company. The board wasn't happy, but they couldn't argue with the evidence I'd compiled. At the end of the meeting, the CEO, Lawrence Harrington himself, looked at me. Delaney, this analysis is exceptional. You may have saved us from a catastrophic mistake. Preston's expression was unreadable. Thank you, sir, I said. I was just doing my job. After the meeting, Preston pulled me aside. You could have made me look bad in there. I could have, I agreed. But I didn't. Because despite what you think of me, Preston, I'm not interested in destroying you. I'm interested in doing good work. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I underestimated you. Yes, I said simply. You did. Over the following months, my role in the company grew. I was brought into high-level strategy meetings. My name appeared on important reports. People started coming to me directly instead of going through Preston. I was becoming indispensable, and Preston noticed. I could see it in the way he watched me during meetings, the way he hesitated before dismissing my ideas like he used to. 6 months after the boardroom humiliation, Preston called me into his office. This time, his tone was different, almost respectful. Delaney, I've been thinking. The company needs a new VP of strategic finance, someone who can handle the complex deals, who has the analytical skills and the judgment to make tough calls. I waited, saying nothing. I'd like to recommend you for the position, he continued, if you're interested. VP of strategic finance. It was a significant promotion. More money, more authority, a direct line to the CEO. Everything I'd worked for. Why now? I asked. Preston leaned back in his chair. Because you've proven yourself. Because the company needs someone like you in that role. He paused. And because I was wrong about you. What I said in that boardroom 6 months ago about you not understanding real wealth, I was wrong. You understand it better than I do. I let his words hang in the air. 6 months ago, I would have given anything to hear him say that. Now it felt hollow. I'll think about it, I said. His eyes widened slightly. You'll think about it? Yes, Preston. I'll think about it. That evening, I sat in my apartment, staring at the city lights. VP of Strategic Finance. It was a dream position, but something nagged at me. Preston's recommendation felt less like recognition and more like self-preservation. He knew I was becoming more valuable to the company. He knew others were noticing. By recommending me, he could claim credit for developing my talent. He could position himself as a mentor, a leader who recognized potential. It was strategic, not generous, but I didn't need his generosity. I'd earned this position myself. The next morning, I went directly to CEO Harrington's office. His assistant tried to stop me, but I insisted it was urgent. Harrington agreed to see me. Delaney, what can I do for you? He asked, gesturing to a chair. Sir, I wanted to discuss my future with the company, I began. I've received an offer for the VP of Strategic Finance position, but before I accept, I wanted to ensure we're aligned on expectations. Harrington looked surprised. Preston told you already? I hadn't approved it yet. He mentioned he'd be recommending me, I said carefully. Harrington leaned forward. Tell me, Delaney, why should I make you VP? I didn't hesitate, because over the past 6 months, I've saved this company from 2 potentially disastrous deals. Because I have the analytical skills to identify problems before they become crises. And because I'm willing to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Harrington smiled. The Silverton correction and the quantum rejection. Yes, I remember. Both situations where Preston might have led us astray, if not for your intervention. I said nothing, letting him draw his own conclusions. You're direct, Harrington observed. I appreciate that. Preston has many strengths, but he's often more concerned with appearances than substance. He paused. If I make you VP, I'll need someone who can push back when necessary. Can you do that? Yes, sir. Even against Preston? Especially against Preston, if it serves the company's interests. Harrington studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Consider yourself the new VP of Strategic Finance. Effective immediately. My assistant will handle the paperwork. I thanked him and left, my heart pounding. I'd just leapfrogged over several senior executives. This would make waves, especially with Preston. The announcement went out that afternoon. Within an hour, my email was flooded with congratulations from colleagues. But Preston didn't call, didn't stop by, nothing. I found him in his office at the end of the day, staring at his computer screen. We need to talk, I said from the doorway. He looked up, his expression cold. You went around me. Straight to Harrington. I went to the CEO to discuss my career, I corrected. That's not going around you. That's taking initiative. I was trying to help you, Preston said, his voice tight. I offered to recommend you, and you stabbed me in the back. I stepped into his office and closed the door. No, Preston. You tried to take credit for my accomplishments. Again, just like you've done for 5 years. But this time, I made sure the person making the decision knew exactly what I've contributed. You made me look incompetent in front of Harrington. No, I said firmly. You did that yourself. I just did my job better than you did yours. Preston stood up, his face red. You think you've won? You think this is over? I met his gaze steadily. I think I've earned something you were given. That's the difference between us, Preston. Over the next few weeks, the tension between Preston and me was obvious to everyone. He excluded me from meetings when he could. He questioned my decisions in front of others. He was trying to undermine me, to prove I wasn't ready for the VP role. But it backfired, because now I had direct access to Harrington, and every time Preston tried to make me look bad, I could present my side directly to the CEO. And my side always came with data, with evidence, with clear reasoning. Preston's approach was political. Mine was factual. And in a company like Harrington Financial, facts won. 3 months into my new role, a major opportunity emerged. A potential acquisition of a regional banking chain. It was the biggest deal the company had ever considered. $90 million. Harrington asked me to lead the due diligence team. Preston was furious. He'd expected to lead the deal himself. But Harrington wanted someone who would be thorough, not someone who would rush to close for the sake of glory. I assembled a team of analysts and dove into the banking chain's financials. The work was grueling, 16-hour days, mountains of data, endless meetings. But I loved it. This was what I trained for. 2 months into the due diligence, I found something. A pattern of risky loans that the banking chain had made to a single group of related entities. The loans looked legitimate on the surface, but when I traced them back, they all connected to a shell company controlled by the banking chain CEO. It was fraud. Sophisticated, well-hidden fraud. But fraud nonetheless. I brought my findings to Harrington immediately. If we acquire this banking chain, we inherit these fraudulent loans, I explained. And when the regulators discover them, and they will, we'll be held liable. We could face fines in the hundreds of millions. Criminal charges are even possible. Harrington's face was grave. Are you certain? Completely. I've triple-checked everything. Does Preston know? Not yet. I wanted to inform you first. Harrington nodded. Walk away from the deal. Immediately. And prepare a report for our legal team. We may need to report this to the authorities. I did exactly that. The deal was killed, and the banking chain's fraud was eventually exposed by federal regulators. When the news broke, Harrington Financial was praised for its due diligence, for catching the fraud before becoming entangled in it. And everyone knew I was the one who'd found it. The day after the news broke, Preston appeared at my office door. He looked smaller, somehow deflated. Can I come in? He asked. I nodded, gesturing to a chair. He sat down, silent for a moment. Then, you saved the company. Again. I did my job, I said simply. No. He shook his head. You did more than that. If I'd been leading that due diligence, I would have missed it. I would have been so focused on closing the deal that I wouldn't have looked deep enough. I said nothing, waiting. I owe you an apology, Preston continued, for what I said in that boardroom a year ago, for the way I've treated you, for trying to take credit for your work. He met my eyes. You were right. You understand real wealth better than I do. Because real wealth isn't about the money. It's about the value you create, the problems you solve, the integrity you bring to your work. I studied him, looking for signs of manipulation, but he seemed genuine. Apology accepted, I said finally. Preston nodded, standing up. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. The company needs people like you. After he left, I sat alone in my office, processing what had just happened. 6 months later, Harrington called me into his office. Preston was already there, along with the head of HR. Delaney, thank you for coming, Harrington began. I have some news. Preston has accepted a position at another firm. He'll be leaving at the end of the month. I glanced at Preston, who gave a small nod. And, Harrington continued, the board and I have decided to promote you to CFO. The words hung in the air. CFO, the position Preston had held. The position he'd used to humiliate me. The role is yours if you want it, Harrington said. You've more than proven yourself. I looked at Preston. Did you recommend me? He smiled slightly. I did, and I meant it. I turned back to Harrington. I accept. After the meeting, Preston and I walked out together. No hard feelings, he asked. No hard feelings, I agreed. You're moving to a good opportunity? Yes. Smaller firm, but more autonomy. It's time for a change. He paused. Delaney, you're going to be an excellent CFO. Better than I was. Thank you, Preston. And for what it's worth, I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. My first day as CFO felt surreal. The office that had been Preston's was now mine. The title that had seemed impossible was now on my business cards. I'd gone from being invisible to being indispensable in just 18 months. But the work didn't get easier. If anything, it got harder. As CFO, I was responsible for the financial health of the entire company. Every decision I made affected hundreds of employees, thousands of shareholders. I thrived on it. My leadership style was different from Preston's. I didn't hoard information or take credit for others' work. I built a team of talented analysts and gave them room to grow. I was demanding but fair, and I never, ever forgot what it felt like to be underestimated. 3 months into my role as CFO, I received an unexpected email. It was from Preston. Subject line, "Thank you." The message was brief. "Delaney, I saw the quarterly report. Exceptional work. You've already surpassed anything I accomplished in that role. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry it took me so long to recognize your talent. Best regards, Preston." I stared at the email for a long time. Then I typed a response. "Preston, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate them. I hope your new role is everything you wanted. Best, Delaney." A year passed. Harrington Financial continued to grow under my financial leadership. We closed several major deals, all of them thoroughly vetted, all of them successful. The board praised my work. Harrington relied on my judgment. I'd become exactly what Preston had once mocked me for not being, someone who understood real wealth. But I'd learned that real wealth wasn't about money or titles or corner offices. It was about respect, about being valued for your contributions, about having your voice heard and your ideas taken seriously. One afternoon, I was preparing for a board meeting when my assistant buzzed me. "There's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." "Who is it?" "Her name is Carmen. She says she's a financial analyst from Sterling Associates." I didn't recognize the name. "Send her in." A young woman entered, probably mid-20s, nervous but determined. She reminded me of myself 5 years ago. "Ms. Delaney, thank you for seeing me," she began. "I know you're busy, but I wanted to ask your advice." "About what?" She took a breath. "I'm being passed over for promotions at my company. My boss takes credit for my work. And recently he humiliated me in front of the board, said I'd never understand what real wealth is." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. The exact same words Preston had used on me. "Sit down," I said gently. Carmen sat, and I could see tears threatening to spill over. She was trying to hold it together, just like I had. "What's your boss's name?" I asked. "Blake Thornton. He's the CFO. And you came to me because I heard your story. Someone told me what happened with Preston, how you turned things around. I thought maybe you'd have advice." I smiled. "I do have advice. But first, tell me, what do you want? Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want?" Carmen thought for a moment. "I want to be respected. I want my work to matter. And I want to prove that I'm just as capable as any of the men in that company who dismissed me." "Good," I said. "Then here's what you need to do. Stop waiting for permission. Stop hoping someone will notice you. Start documenting everything. Every idea that gets stolen, every accomplishment that gets credited to someone else. Build your case. But how do I get leverage? You find what they need, and you control access to it. For me, it was compliance signatures. For you, it might be something different. But there's always something." Carmen and I talked for over an hour. I gave her specific strategies, warned her about pitfalls, shared the lessons I'd learned. When she left, she looked different, more confident, more determined. I thought about that conversation for days afterward, about how one moment of humiliation had shaped my entire trajectory, about how I'd turned pain into power, invisibility into influence. Preston's words still echoed sometimes. "You'll never understand what real wealth is." But I'd proven him wrong. I understood it perfectly. Real wealth was having the skills and knowledge that others needed. Real wealth was being so good at what you did that you became irreplaceable. Real wealth was respect earned through excellence, not given through privilege. 6 months later, I received another email from Carmen. She'd been promoted to senior analyst. Her boss, Blake, had left the company after she'd exposed his pattern of taking credit for others' work. She thanked me for the advice, for believing in her. I wrote back, "You did this yourself. I just reminded you of what you already knew. Keep going. The world needs more people like us." It's been 5 years since that day in the boardroom. 5 years since Preston told me I'd never understand real wealth. I'm now one of the youngest CFOs in the industry. I've been featured in financial magazines, invited to speak at conferences, asked to mentor young professionals. But the moment I'm most proud of isn't any of those achievements. It's what I've built at Harrington Financial. A culture where talent is recognized regardless of gender or background. Where people are valued for their contributions, not their ability to network or take credit. Where analytical rigor matters more than political maneuvering. Last month, Harrington announced his retirement. The board voted unanimously to name me the next CEO. When the announcement was made, I thought about Preston, wherever he is now. I thought about how he tried to keep me small, tried to make me doubt myself. And I thought about how spectacularly he'd failed. Because I'd never needed him to see my worth. I'd always known it. I just needed the opportunity to prove it. The CFO who mocked me taught me an important lesson, though I doubt he meant to. He taught me that the people who underestimate you are giving you an advantage. They don't see you coming. They don't expect you to rise. And by the time they realize their mistake, it's too late. I'd never forget that lesson. And I'd make sure that everyone who worked for me understood it too. Real wealth isn't about money. It's about the power you build through excellence, integrity, and refusing to accept anyone else's limited view of who you can become. Preston was right about one thing. I hadn't understood real wealth back then. But I do now. And it's more valuable than he ever imagined.